powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4 powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. 3 days away from the NFL draft. This weekend was a wild one. A lot of crazy news and rumors that came out there. Jalen Hurts met the media today as a newly minted man. You'll hear more about that coming up here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. Our draft party Thursday at Maynard's in Margate. Come on out and see us live. All of our qualifiers. We have that trip we're giving away. Plus, if you come on out, you didn't qualify, we'll have tickets to some great concerts and stuff. So come on out and see us this Thursday at Maynard's in Margate. Geoff Mosher's here from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast. As it was a crazy weekend with Eagle stuff, man. I don't even know where we start, but is Derrick Henry going to be an Eagle?
I can't see. I can't say I can't see it happening. You can see anything happening on draft day. I know the new GM for the Titans, Rand Carthon, said today that he's not taking any calls about trading for Derrick Henry, but this kind of stuff doesn't just pop out of nowhere, right? There's got to be something to it, but it could be a player trying to force his way out and using a team as leverage, or it could have been it wasn't the Titans fielding the call, it was the Titans making the call. So there's a lot of wiggle room there. If the Eagles were to take on Derrick Henry, I don't think it would be to build a Titans-style offense. It would be to bring Derrick Henry in the same way they brought LeGarrette Blount in several years ago, to be a lead runner, a powerful bruising runner, a fourth quarter runner, but I don't think it's per se a featured runner. Now, there might be some games where he had a lot of carries because he's doing well, or you have a big lead, or a few times where LeGarrette Blount did. And certainly the Titans, we'll see on draft day, they're full of surprises sometimes, as we saw last year, and they probably are trying to move away toward being a Derrick Henry-centric offense after 4 or 5 years and only really not getting – I know they got to the AFC Championship, but, they lost. They lost pretty handily, if I remember, even though they were up by 17 on the Chiefs that year. So you can see sort of the makings of something going on there. But, again, I don't think the Eagles would be in the Derrick Henry market because they're trying to be some kind of Titans-like offense.
Yeah, and you wonder, they got burned by DeMarco Murray a couple of years ago where they made that trade, and after Murray had some big years in Dallas and a huge year, and then basically he just fell apart, you wonder when the tread completely falls off the tire for Derrick Henry, who, let's be honest, Mose, he had touched the ball a ton, and you said just kind of hinted at it a little bit, but what kind of fit would he be in an RPO style of offense?
Yeah, interestingly, he started to catch the ball a little bit more over the last few years than he had earlier in his career. And he showed to have some pretty, for a guy that size, right, so, some decent hands, at least. He caught 33 passes last year, which was, almost double the number that he had caught in 21, which was 18, and, 20, he was 19. So that was the most of his career. But again, we're not talking about a West Coast style running back or a Kenneth Gainwell style running back. You're talking about a downhill, big, powerful runner. That can still work in an RPO offense because all you have to do is fake the handoff, and that's certainly going to draw the linebackers close to the line of scrimmage, and that's where you pop your perimeter routes on the boundary there, or your slants and things like that. So it's really not the RPOs. It's just more that, how much are you willing to pay? How much money is going to wind up getting absorbed by the Titans in this deal? How much would the Eagles be willing to pay? If this is even a conversation at all. I'm just answering the question you're asking me. I have heard nothing about any real, true, legit consideration of that happening.
We've been talking a lot about Bijan Robinson, and today over on NFL Network, they brought him up. And this was the comment. It says, a couple of NFC teams I talked to this weekend do not want the Eagles to draft Robinson. The thought of that offense with his addition is scary in their eyes. Do they have to be worried about the Eagles taking Robinson?
I think that's funny that they're fearing that. Now, I wonder if they legitimately think it'll happen. I think that's
Is that their way to say, question. Take Robinson, we want you to?
Yeah, right. No, I don't think that they're the Eagles to take Robinson. I think that they're pretty on par with believing that Bijan Robinson on the Eagles would just make them almost an undefendable offense. So there's definitely some merit to that concept, no doubt about it. Here's what I think is funny. I think fans would really love to see this and think it's if you don't take Bijan Robinson and you take an offensive lineman instead, say Peter Skronsky, that's who we had in our Inside the Birds mock draft go to the Eagles at 10, that it's sort of overthinking it, or it's not the move that's becoming of a Super Bowl champion. But I don't know, if I asked you who's been a bigger part of the success that the Cowboys have had, and not that they've had a lot of it, but I mean, they've been better over the last 5 years with Dak than before, right? Would you say Zach Martin, or would you say Ezekiel Elliott has been more important to the Cowboys' success overall?
Good question.
If I asked you which one you'd rather have, whose career you'd rather have, Ezekiel Elliott's or Zach
that's
Martin?
really hard. I mean, obviously the offensive line doesn't have like the glitz and the glamour, but he has probably been. I mean, Zeke Elliott for the first 3 years of his career was pretty darn good.
Correct. Zach Martin for every year of his career has been really good and a Pro Bowler every year, almost every year of his career. I don't have it in front of me, but I know he's made a ton of Pro Bowls, and I think he's still playing at a pretty high level even later into his career, and you're getting more out of him than you've got from Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, Zach Martin might go to the Hall of Fame. If I'm not mistaken, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 Pro Bowls, 6 All-Pros or 5 All-Pros. So, I mean, the answer is Zach Martin. He's been the better player. He is the better player. He's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame. So why
the longevity thing that you bring up,
Eagles taking him.
The longevity that you bring up is a great point, is that you draft an offensive lineman, you get him for 10, 12 years. You draft a running back, you're probably getting 4, 5, 6 high quality. I look at a guy like Todd Gurley and his career, and this guy was a stud and then just completely fell off the map. I mean, so, yeah, if you're taking a running back, that's more of a 4 to 6 year career. If you're taking the offensive lineman, you're getting a player for probably 10, you're hoping 10 to 12 years.
Exactly. And I don't understand why anybody would listen, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I don't knock anybody for anything, but I can't sort of understand why you would watch Eagles football for the last, 5 to 7 years especially, and see the Eagles sort of overemphasize offensive line and defensive line, succeed because of it, and then still think it's a bad idea to take a flex guard, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Well, and listen, a lot of that, Moshe, I think you would agree, has to do with that instant gratification of the moment. You talk about the draft for so long that when that night comes, you want a player that you can quantify their success when you watch them. And the Eagles, when you draft a wide receiver, you get that. Devonta Smith, right off the bat, you get a chance to see that. Now, sometimes it doesn't work out. You get Jalen Reagor, and you're disappointed. When you draft, last year, Jordan Davis, he didn't play all that much. When you draft an offensive lineman, a lot of times that is not seen. But I think this team's formula has really worked with drafting guys. Now, that being said, the Skronsky thing, he's an offensive guard, essentially. I mean, how many times does a guard get taken in the top 10? Not often.
Not often. I don't have the exact number in front of me. I know offensive line is a frequent. In fact, we're going to have some analytical data research by Sam Finkel, who's been working for us at ITB tomorrow on positions that go at 10th overall and the success and failure. But wide receiver is the number one position picked, number 10 overall on offense.
How about that?
And offensive tackle is the second at, I think, at 25% frequency. And the success rate of the offensive linemen in the Super Bowl era, taken 10th overall, is something like 8 out of the last 10 have been pretty good. Did you guys lose me?
You froze for 1 second, but there you are.
Sorry, I was saying 8 out of those 10 offensive linemen picked 10th overall in the Super Bowl era have turned out to be pretty good.
Yeah. All right, well, listen, I would be pretty I would be not pretty surprised, but I would be pretty surprised if the Bears don't take a lineman in front of the Eagles. Okay, that's where I'm, So the question
Agreed.
would be, how many linemen are going to be taken before they go at number 10? That's a big question because is Peter Skronsky their favorite guy? We keep bringing his name up, but is he even the guy that makes the most sense for them? Paris Johnson at least played right guard at Ohio State. He's also played tackle. So theoretically, you could say, hey, this guy has played guard. We could play him there for a year or two, and then he can move out to tackle if and when Lane Johnson, at the end of that deal.
Sure, and I believe that you can say the same about Broderick Jones from Georgia. I think he has guard potential and has played there as well, and maybe even the kid from Tennessee, Darnell Wright. So to me, it all depends on just your team evaluation. If you like Darnell Wright or Paris Johnson and you like their versatility to play tackle and guard, but they only project as starters to you who really need a lot of work to be a Pro Bowler, but you believe that Peter Skronsky is a 10-time Pro Bowler in the making, then you take Peter Skronsky even if you just think he can play guard.
Yeah.
Because, again, you don't pass on supreme talent.
Okay, we talk about value. You don't want to draft a running back because the Eagles don't value that spot. Has offensive guard become a spot that is now valued enough to take? Because that used to be like the Eagles, they drafted Juergens, who they probably are going to play a guard this year if they don't take somebody at 10. They took Landon Dickerson in the second round. Sayamala was a third-round pick. That's about where you get these guys that play that position. So now you're saying I value that position in the top 10.
Yeah, I think there's an in-between here. Ordinarily, the Eagles have wanted offensive linemen. When they do take an offensive lineman in the first round, they want the positional versatility. They want the ability to play a guy at guard or tackle. And by the way, even if they evaluate Peter Skronsky at guard, he did play tackle at Northwestern. So even if they don't think he'll be a great starting tackle, you've got a guy you might think be a great starting guard who can move over to tackle if need be in a pinch, if Lane Johnson's hurt or, you want to do that. It's not like that he can't play the position at all in the NFL, but you also get 2 more years, assuming Lane Johnson's going to play at least 2 because of that extension and maybe more, to find yourself another tackle that you might want in the first round. So I just think that with the Eagles, they have priorities, they have positions that they prioritize, but you can't just lock them in. I can't say just because they've only taken in the last few years tackles who can also play guard that they will not take someone that they view as an elite interior offensive lineman only, because I would have told you 3 years ago they were not going to take a backup quarterback in the second round, right?
Yeah.
I know how much they prioritize quarterbacks and the backup position. So I think it's dangerous to lock them into every single thing they've done in the history and then saying they won't do that because, right? I mean, we're sitting here having conversations about maybe taking Bijan Robinson for the same reason, because we know that there was a chance that they would have taken, if he was there, they probably would have taken McCaffrey that year that he came out. So there's always going to be some exceptions to the rule.
Geoff Mosher, InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast. Over at Monday Morning Quarterback, Peter King did his one and only mock draft, and he gave the Eagles Nolan Smith, in part because he says, quote, a GM who's always smart when I do this exercise told me he knew the Eagles love Smith. Would you surmise that that's a player that would be in play at number 10?
I'm a little conflicted on that one. And, Adam and I like to do most of our real sort of deep dives about a day or two before the draft. People, I think, are a little bit more, that we talk to, are a little bit more forthcoming there because you're just so close to the event. Now, Nolan Smith is a guy with great exterior explosion, right? And he sort of has Hassan Reddick-like abilities because he's a light stand-up pass rusher who's got tremendous athleticism and speed. If you draft Nolan Smith, you cannot play him inside at the 3 technique. You cannot play him, obviously, at nose. He's not a coverage linebacker unless you are moving him to that spot like the Cardinals tried to do with Hassan Reddick, but they would never do that with a first-round pick and play him at middle linebacker, right? So essentially, you're drafting a guy who's going to play the exact same position as Hassan Reddick. How are you going to get that guy on the field as much as you want to? I mean, listen, I'm big best player available guy, and Hassan Reddick could get hurt, and what do you do, right? Then he would slide right in, and you certainly can have some packages where Reddick and Nolan Smith are on the field, but then in a 4-man rush, but then you're taking off Fletcher Cox or Milton Williams or Brandon Graham or Josh Sweat. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense at all. I'm saying I struggle with the match of personnel, scheme, player, and traits and how that would all work compared to other players that they have historically looked, the size, the weight, the measurement and stuff that they historically look for at that position.
Yeah, and a lot of people, some people like Nolan Smith because of what you said, the explosion, 4.3 speed. But where does he fit in on this particular roster? Lucas Van Ness is another guy who, was a guy, does he get playing time, rotational right away? Does he fit better?
100%. I mean, he's, from what I understand, from what the tape shows, and from me watching him, because he's a Big Ten guy at Iowa and listening to Greg Cosell break him down. I mean, he's a guy who can stand up, you can move him around, you can play him a 3 technique, inside as a pass rusher. It sounds like they could use him the way they used to use Brandon Graham, which was, different spots, different alignments. And that's what this defense, I think, would flourish on. And you talked about the Bears. Do the Bears take a lineman before them? Well, if it's not an offensive lineman, the Bears really need pass rushers. And, in our mock draft on ITB today, we had the Bears going with Lucas Van Ness there because he's a player with sort of, I don't want to say boundless potential, but I know that personnel people who I've spoken to about him just really think that there's a really high ceiling there for him. It's funny that he didn't start at Iowa because he was an underclassman, but he's clearly a tremendous athlete. And the fact that you can move him around and play him in multiple positions is a big, big plus for him.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you just made for the listeners because a lot of people who don't like Van Ness simply because, well, this guy didn't even start. That is kind of a university, mindset. Mm-hmm. They had seniors and they just start the seniors.
And that's why Iowa wins 7 games every year.
Yeah, I don't jive with that mindset there. But that is one of the reasons why Van Ness technically didn't start for Iowa. He did get starting level snaps. We'll see it all unfold. By the way, pick 30 in that Peter King mock, they went with the running back Jahmyr Gibbs at number 30. We keep talking running back. They don't value, yada, yada. At number 30, would you be scratching your head there? You're saying, eh.
I mean, it's weird because I like him for the Eagles in the second round, right? And you could say 30th is like a second-round pick. But I'd have to see sort of I would think that at 30, this is not a blue-chip draft, but it's a deep draft in a lot of positions that could really help the Eagles. Cornerback, defensive line, probably some pretty good, did I say corner? Yeah, I said corner, D-line. There are a bunch of tight ends. Not the Eagles need that. I just don't know that using a second first-round pick on a running back who's really doesn't – he's not Bijan. You're not going to play him 65, 70% of the time. The fifth-year option doesn't really help you that much because he's not necessarily a starter right away. I just think that there's better sort of use as long as there's a highly rated prospect there as well, like someone equal to Jahmyr Gibbs, maybe on defense, though, that would sort of be a better overall decision there based on your contract terms, that fifth-year option I'm talking about, usage and everything like that.
All right. Well, that will be interesting. Real quick on that. As having that fifth-year option, is that something that the Eagles would prefer to have for a running back? They didn't have it with Miles Sanders. Would they have liked him to have that fifth-year option, or would that be something that they wouldn't want to have to deal with?
Well, it's a bigger sum of money that fifth year. It's not the franchise tag, obviously, but it's more money that you commit to the player if he's going to be on your roster. So, I don't know. Did the Eagles didn't want to pay Miles Sanders what did he wind up making? $6 million?
Yeah,
$6 million a year.
Something like that,
I don't know what the fifth year option on the running backs would have been. A first round running back would have been this year, but it's probably around that, or if not more. And I'm not sure that that's a number that would have satisfied the Eagles. So I don't know that the fifth-year option is as important on running back as it is on players at other positions.
All right, draft 3 days. It'll all unfold. We'll finally get the answer to the quiz, which will be nice. But then after that, you don't get a lot of football. That's the downside. Oh, you get the mini camps and stuff, right?
Yeah, but no, like with their modified mini camp schedule now, I mean, they start later than anybody and they end earlier than everybody. the mini camps are not what they used to be. There's very little, juice coming out of the mini camps anymore.
Well, I see you change your Twitter handle. Is that a new Twitter handle for you there?
It is a new Twitter handle. That's correct.
Geoff P. Mosher.
That's right.
What
do you think the P stands for?
Is it
and
Paul?
Keep it clean. Nice job. You could have gone a lot of ways with that, Mike. I credit you. You kept it clean, and you actually nailed it on the head.
Geoff Paul Mosher. Geoff P. Right. Mosher on Twitter. No more Geoff Mosher NFL.
Nah, we retired that for a little bit. I'm branching out now. I do the Powder Blue podcast with Frank Close. That's Phillies. I want to be known as a Philadelphia sports mind, not just an Eagles mind or NFL mind.
So follow him now at Geoff P. Mosher on Twitter. All right, bud, we'll talk to you Wednesday, and you will firm up your thought.
That sounds good, man. Take care.
All right, Geoff Mosher, everybody, from Inside the Birds podcast and InsideTheBirds.com.